Taylor got to do the introduction again. Isn't that terribly exciting, Brian? I will make sure you get to do it next time. Don't worry.
I don't want to.
He says that just because he didn't get to do it the first one. That's whatever. Welcome to cinema.
I sense a little jealousy there.
Right, yeah. You shut up. I'm talking, right? I was doing you can hear me say welcome in a boisterous voice. That's my introduction. Come on now.
Yeah.
Welcome to Cinema Flicks Music Picks. I'm Dave, your host, most peaceful least, blah, blah, blah. Right, I'm not being mocked to my own channel. Well, unless it's me mocking me. This is Ryan Gavalier from Ryan's Venal Destination. You've seen him before. This is Taylor Gopian from LP Tremors. You've seen him before. Friends, colleagues, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Can't complain.
I am great. How about you, Davey?
Good. Well, thanks for watching, folks. This has been an awesome episode of Catching Up with the Guys. So we're going to be talking Re-Animator, and we're going to be doing the trilogy, for it is 3, even though people tend to forget about Beyond Re-Animator. And we may have a look at From Beyond. We haven't 100% decided, but we may have a look at From Beyond. But we're definitely starting today, for we are here to talk about 1985's Re-Animator. Starring Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, David Gale, Bruce Abbott, directed by Stuart Gordon. And so we'll just do our old classic roundtable takeaways. So Ryan, because I didn't let you do the introduction, please, I would like you to be first.
Okay. So Re-Animator, because I was really, really sad about not getting to do the introduction.
I'm sorry, I'll make it up to you, okay?
You don't need to. I'm not bothered. But yeah, so this movie came out in 1985, directed by Stuart Gordon, produced by Brian Usna. This is such a classic movie. I mean, I remember first seeing it when I was probably about 16 or 17, maybe, and just being blown away. I mean, the movie kind of has a reputation, especially the unrated cut, for being probably one of the goriest movies of its time. And at least a movie that kind of got a larger following. Like it's really, really, really gory and great special effects. I mean, they're like, I would say for the most part, like Tom Savini level score effects in this movie. Like they're really, really good. And they're also really gratuitous as well. You just have a lot of good humor in this movie. It definitely has kind of like an ironic edge the whole time. Obviously, it was based off the H.P. Lovecraft story loosely. So you kind of have like a little bit of a serious edge to it, but it's also just very humorous too. I mean, it's kind of sleazy, it's silly at times, it's over the top when it needs to be, etc. And I mean, you have such a great cast. You got Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West. He's perfectly quirky, we'll say. I mean, there's moments where he is kind of likable. There's moments where he's like real deranged, and you're like, okay, we don't know what this guy's going to turn into. Like, he plays he gives us a lot of different emotions about his character because it has a lot of depth. Obviously, he's like a scientist. He comes to this college now after his work that he was doing with another prolific scientist. And he comes there, he starts rooming with Daniel, who is the main character, along with him, and who is also the boyfriend of Megan, who's played by Barbara Crampton. Both Daniel and Megan are kind of hesitant right off the bat to let Herbert stay with them essentially, but he gives them money and stuff, and Daniel agrees. Meg is not happy at all. She instantly has a really bad feeling about him. And so already in that whole circle, I said Meg and Daniel are romantic. They're kind of keeping it on the down low because of her father, and then also the Dr. Hill, who's like total creep stiff of a person, obviously has some creepy feelings toward her, and just a whole dynamic with her dad also being the dean of the college. And with that, Daniel not wanting to lose his funding or get kicked out or get in trouble, because, you know, him and Meg both really want him to succeed with his degree so he can have a career. And then they talk about how when he's done, they can be out in the open about their relationship, basically. But yeah, Herbert comes in, which complicates things because, I mean, Herbert's already cool with like Dr. Hill and Dean Halsey at this moment of time, basically, which will soon change eventually. But yeah, so they don't really want to step on over him too much, Herbert, so they let him stay. Things take a weird turn when they realize that their cat is missing. And so Meg instantly is accusatory toward Herbert for it. Daniel doesn't really want to jump to conclusions, but Meg ends up seeing the cat in the fridge, which makes Daniel really, really angry. Herbert comes up with some excuses that it was already dead and stuff, etc. A little later, we see the cat is back alive because of a serum, which we find out, this reanimating serum, which takes this gang of friends on a really, really weird path of many deaths, many reanimations, and a lot of chaos. I guess that's my way of telling the story without giving too many spoilers. In case you haven't seen the movie already, I'd like you to kind of see some of the plot points that come up for themselves. But yeah, like I said, it's just so much fun the whole way through. I mean, the movie's actually really well made. Like, it's sleazy, but at the same time, it's also a really good movie. The performances are pretty solid throughout. I mean, everybody gives whatever performance they need to be, whether it's David Gale as Dr. Hill just being an absolute piece of shit creep, like, you know, he nails that role, or Daniel is the kind of likable protagonist, you know, and Meg, the two of them, like, their romance is very realistic feeling. You really root for them. You feel bad when they're going through difficulties because of all the crazy stuff that happens. And then, like I said, obviously Jeffrey Combs, oh gosh, he's so good in this. He's funny, he's creepy, he's likable, he's hateable, he's everything he needs to be at once. And then Dean Allen, you know, he's kind of like that middle of like an antagonist and kind of like good character as well. He's not really a bad guy, he's just kind of a buzzkill, honestly. And you know, he gets in the way of characters like Daniel in some problematic ways, but obviously his story does not end pleasantly, and as his life starts to unravel, he plays a very good performance of basically being like insane, which is really good stuff there. The direction in this movie is awesome. I mean, especially this unrated version, which I've seen that and the R-rated version before. I mean, the unrated version is only an hour and 26 minutes long, which is actually shorter than the R-rated version, as and which is interesting. But it's paced perfectly. I mean, there's never a dry moment. It's just a constant thrill ride of gore, of weird science stuff, etc. There's one thing that I don't really like about the movie, and I wouldn't say it's like a flaw of quality. It's just I don't really care that they did this type of thing. There is a sexual assault scene, which is kind of, I would say it's like kind of played for laughs, which I don't really appreciate, honestly. And the actress Barbara Crampton apparently was all for the scene, thought it would get her some more attention and stuff, but I think that's kind of gross still, honestly, because it is really playing rape for laughs, and I just don't think it's a very funny subject. So that is probably my one flaw with the movie. Although the way she is saved is pretty cool. So that is good, but I don't really appreciate that scene very much. But meanwhile, all the gore and stuff is fine, double standards. But I think that's different. It's very, very different. I just think that you can laugh at some comical gore, but I can't really laugh at a rape scene. So that's where I'll leave that at. But overall, though, I think it's a great movie. I think it's a classic of the 80s. I mean, honestly, it doesn't, other than that one scene, it really doesn't feel very dated at all. I mean, the cat, when it reanimates, that is a really bad effect, but it almost seems kind of intentional to me that it's a really cheesy effect. So it's not dated because it is intentional, because it's doing what it was trying to do. So I think in that sense, it's kind of cool. But all the other effects, like I said, are great. I mean, the movie's really grotesque, whether it's, I mean, there's a lot of nudity in this movie, but a lot of it is really grotesque nudity, which is appropriate for a Lovecraftian kind of film. It's not sexualized other than that one scene. It's all very grotesque and stuff, as is the gore. I mean, like I said, there's buckets and buckets of guts, blood everywhere in this movie, and that's awesome. That was, I think for me, when I first saw it, that was probably my biggest thing that impressed me right off the bat, was just how gory it was, because I really was like a huge gore hound at that time of my life. Like, I was just looking for the goriest movies possible. Now I'm not quite as much like that, but it's still cool to watch. And it's, like I said, I think it is really good gore effects too. But overall, just a great movie. I think it's well written, it's well acted, well directed, good amount of humor, good amount of, I guess, kind of thrilling stuff. I wouldn't say there's anything that's really scary. It's more like shocking than anything at times, at least for me. David, you mentioned, I think it's even more of a sci-fi movie than it is horror. I mean, it doesn't feel like a traditional horror, except maybe a couple scenes. If I was going to rate the movie, I would say probably a 10 out of 10, honestly. Like, even though I do have one issue with something content wise, I don't have issues with the quality of the film by any means. I think it's very well made. It's probably one of the best sci-fi horror movies ever made, with a comedy edge too. I mean, with or without, I think it just, even if you watch it alongside movies that just play it straight, I still think this is one of the best ones that ever came out. And there's a reason why it does have a legacy. I mean, it's just an excellent movie. You really can't go wrong with it. Yeah, that's my review.
Fantastic. Thank
Nice.
you very much, Ryan. This is the bit where we thank people for the reviews. I don't normally have to do this. Thank you very much for that, Ryan. That was an insightful, informative, and heartfelt review.
Kiss ass.
Well, somebody's not getting to the countdown ever again. He loved doing that the other day, Ryan. He was so excited. Taylor, I want to hear what you think of Re-Animator. Are you going to give it another 10? Take us on the Taylor Re-Animator journey.
Okay, what to say about Re-Animator?
Oh, that's me. Your review.
What's that?
Oh, I thought you were saying, what should I say about Re-Animator?
What to say about Re-Animator?
Oh.
I had a very difficult time trying to gather my thoughts about this particular movie for this review. And I mean, I've watched this movie a bunch of times, but it's a movie that I love this movie. This movie is just straight up fun. This is just a fun ride from beginning all the way to end. If you take a movie like, for example, Jason Goes to Hell, you take that, put a little science fiction twist into that movie, that's your Re-Animator. This is extremely gory. Guts are everywhere. This movie just does not give a fuck about anything. It does whatever the hell it wants. I really appreciate that. And another thing I can take away from Re-Animator, and I kind of mentioned this, I think, in one of my one of the Friday reviews. I am a very tough crowd when it comes to horror comedy. You know, it's just something that never dwelled with me. There's just a select few horror comedies I really, really like. This movie is definitely a horror comedy, and this is by far one of the movies that works well for me. And I think a big reason for that is it just does not care. It's just a movie that really goes for it. I mean, it doesn't really care if you like it, you dislike it. It seems like it just did whatever the hell it wanted, and that's a movie I can really, really gravitate towards. As far as the special effects go, I think Ryan, I think you're being a little too nice. It's a hit or miss. You know, as far as gore goes, and the guts and gore stuff like that, I feel like they did that very well. And Ryan, you did mention this particular scene with the cat. When the cat comes to life, that thing looks like a freaking robot. That does not look genuine at all. And there's just little scenes like that where it's just like, that's no. I mean, it's something I can have fun with. It's not really a negative for me, but I don't know. It's something that did not quite age well for me.
Well, Tyler, it's got a broken back. Don't expect it to do the tango.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Like that scene just. That scene, I just laughed my ass off, to be honest, because it was just a scene that was so bad, but it was so good all at the same time. As far as pacing goes, this movie definitely is paced very, very, very well. It's definitely not a slow burn. It hits you right in that opening scene. You see Herbert, with the antidote against this guy who's pretty much a zombie. I don't know what the hell you would call the bodies that come back to life, really, because I guess it's zombies, but it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's like zombies on steroids. I don't know, but yeah, right when that opening scene comes, it takes you for a ride, and it just does not let down. And if anything, especially in the third act, it just gets more and more grotesque as it goes on. And then, oh my God. So yeah, overall, yeah, the special effects, they're a little bit of a hit or miss, but the misses you can definitely have a lot of fun with. And one thing I really want to point out about this that I really consider as a positive is the score. I think the score is excellent. It's demeaning when it needs to be demeaning, it's dark when it needs to be dark, it's fun when it needs to be fun. I think as far as score goes, it is scored very, very, very well, front to back. Absolutely no issues with the score at all. As far as characters go, I mean, this is a movie from 1985, and I have to say, for a movie in 1985, I think this is very, very well acted, to be honest with you. Not perfect, definitely not perfect, but for what this movie is going for, and for us, I guess it's, I don't know if I would really call this a slasher, but
No.
yeah, a schlocky movie from 1985, a schlocky horror movie from 1985. This movie is acted very, very well. I mean, Jeffrey Combs as Herbert, he is, I mean, I guess you can call him a horror icon at this point, but you can't really, because he's not necessarily talked about much. But I think he really, really should. I mean, this is a guy you just really can't read at all. You feel like you should hate him, but you really love him, and he's just very, very unpredictable. He has this weird personality, especially in the beginning. I mean, Megan, she had every right to be suspicious of this fucking guy. And I would have been pissed if I was her and Dan said, "Hey, yeah, just I guess, yeah, just come live with me." I would have been pissed too. I'm like, this guy's a freaking freak, you know. So I get it, but yeah, so he's out there, but I'm still till this day, as many times as I've watched this movie, I still can't read this guy. I don't know if he is a good guy or a bad guy. He's just all over the place, but it's not to the point where you're just kind of falling down on this character and he's just kind of a brush away. This is a character that is very all over the place, but he's scripted well, if that makes sense. But yeah, so that's a little bit of Herbert. An odd guy, all over the place, but you just don't know what to make of him. Yeah, Dan, I feel like Dan is extremely likable. Does do a lot of really dumb shit during during the hour and a half portion of this movie. I just love really stupid decisions. For example, like what I mentioned, letting this guy into his apartment or his house, whatever, and letting him live there. That was just freaking ridiculous. But so it's little things like that Dan does that just it's fun, but he's an idiot. He's an absolute moron at a lot of times. Megan is probably the most likable out of all of the characters here. I don't know, something about Megan. She seemed very, very genuine. And she's the type of person that just did not take shit. She didn't take shit from Dan when Dan was being somewhat of an asshole at times. But and yeah, Megan, she was just, I don't know, something about her. She was just very, very likable to me. And then you have Dr. Hill, which is the token creep that we all see in a bunch of 80s schlock. I mean, we've seen, look at every single Friday the 13th movie, especially in the 80s. You have that one token character that's kind of a creep. And this guy, he really takes it to a whole other level. I mean, every single sentence he puts out towards Megan is just fucking wow. Wow, I like, and then it just gets weird and weird, especially when he doesn't. It's even worse when he doesn't even have a head, and yeah, and hence that particular scene Ryan was talking about. But yeah, so yeah, that's a little bit of Dr. Hill. He's just a token creep, very obviously very dislikable, but he does bring fun to this movie. I mean, it's fun to make fun of this guy. And I do like when I love Herbert's interaction with Dr. Hill, because Herbert is literally just calling him out on all of his bullshit. Every single interaction they have, Herbert always has something to say. Like from the moment that Herbert met Dr. Hill, he goes, "Yeah, your theories are, yeah, they're outdated." And he just has this little attitude towards Dr. Hill that I absolutely loved. But yeah, I love their interactions, and yeah, Dr. Hill's just that token creep. Then you have Dean, which is obviously Megan's father, and Ryan. Yeah, you said it perfectly. I don't know what to make of this guy either. I don't know if if I should like him or if I shouldn't like him. A little bit of the same thing with Herbert, but completely on the other end of the spectrum. He is he does have a very serious demeanor. He does get in the way of Dan and Megan on countless occasions. Yeah, but and then obviously we all know what happens to Dean towards the end, hence that gigantic clusterfuck of a third act. Yeah, so that's a little bit of Dean. He's a character where he is a very serious character. He does bring a serious energy to this particular movie. Maybe not towards the third act when he gets infected, I guess, but yeah, that's a little bit of Dean for you. But overall, those are probably the biggest five you should probably gravitate towards when watching this movie. There's little characters in between that are also good. For example, for some reason I love the security guard in the morgue. The security guard always made me laugh. And, especially in the third act when, heads are flying out of the door and he's just looking at it like, what?
I quite like him coming to a particularly interesting part in his little porno magazine that he's reading.
Yes.
And decides to go to the toilet for 5 minutes. Yeah, it came to a good chapter in that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so overall, this is a movie where I really shouldn't like it because, like I said, I'm a little touchy when it comes to horror comedies. They just come out as ridiculous. I don't know, something about them. There's really a select few, and this is definitely one of the few. Movie I shouldn't really gravitate towards, but I really, really do. I love this movie to death. I have so much fun with this movie. As how ridiculous of a movie this really is. And on paper, this is a piece of shit movie, but it's so freaking fun. It's so fun. It's very well acted. I mean, when I say well acted, for an 80s schlock horror movie, it is very well acted. Overall, there obviously you do have those ridiculous scenes. There's a movie you really can't take too seriously. It's kind of same thing with the Friday the 13th movies. You really can't take most of them very, very seriously. So if you have that type of mindset, you're gonna fall in love with this movie, which is why I'm not gonna give it a 10 out of 10, but I'm gonna give it. I feel comfortable giving it a solid. I give it a 9 out of 10. I feel comfortable with a 9 out of 10. I think this is just a fun ass ride from beginning to end, paced perfectly. It's definitely not a slow burn, it's definitely not a movie that just pummels you in the face like that. It's paced very, very well. I have no issues with the pacing. I have no issues with the scores. Acting is pretty good. Yeah, 9 out of 10. Oh, and one thing I should probably mention, and I don't know if this is, EMS me talking, but that in the beginning of the movie where they're trying to resuscitate this woman that obviously died, that is the worst CPR I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Oh my God. What is this?
I was just thinking that.
He's like fingertipping her freaking chest. What the fuck is that?
You don't need to get in there.
Yeah, man, she is not coming back from that shit.
She only went in with a mild flu as well. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's just a little thing. That was just like the shittiest CPR, and then that same CPR happens like way at the end where he's trying to resuscitate, when Dan's trying to resuscitate somebody else. I'm not gonna get into what the shit that goes on in the third act, but I'm just talking about the CPR. The CPR, Dan is the worst CPR provider I've ever seen in my freaking life.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, this is just a fun ride. Don't take this movie seriously. I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. It's a blast.
Fantastic. Now that you've pointed out the bad CPR, I don't even want to review this piece of crap. I'm just done. This is to me now. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tyler.
Thank you. Yeah.
What a pair of reviews to follow. So 1922, H.P. Lovecraft does the serial of Herbert West Re-Animator, and it's considered the worst thing he ever did. It was forgotten. Stuart Gordon couldn't even find a copy when somebody recommended it to him years later. And when he read it, he decided he wanted to do it as a theatre play. And somebody said, it's going to be far too expensive. There's no way you can possibly do that. You can do it as a TV show. Then somebody else said to him, it's not going to work. TV horror isn't big at the moment. You're going to need to try and get a small budget for a film. So he does. And familiar faces to those of us who follow, like Ryan and I'm sure you as well, Tyler, Full Moon features and things. You know, the bands are in here. Richard Band does the score for it, for example. And Brian Usna is obviously all over the place. So we've got familiar faces that are getting involved, and Stuart Gordon's a theatre guy. So he's used to working with actors, and that explains a lot, I think, in terms of the performances and how he can, everybody, you said it's they play it well for a schlocky movie. I think they're actually playing it perfectly for every single part that they need to. Dr. Hill, yeah, he's a horrible character, repulsive. And what he does in that scene that Ryan talked about is deplorable. But that is exactly the way that performance should be pitched from David Gale. I agree. As you need. To start at the beginning, which is quite often where you should start with these things, but not always the most interesting. We're in Switzerland with Herbert, and as you mentioned, the pacing is so good because straight away the film almost says, right, we're not going to have a reanimation for a while, so we better put something in at the start so audiences don't drop off. So we have Dr. Hans Gruber, unfortunately not Alan Rickman from Die Hard, but Dr. Hans Gruber, Herbert's mentor in Switzerland, mid-reanimation. So we're thrown straight in at the deep end. Herbert's already, you killed him. I did not. Jeremy delivery through it. This is just absolutely fantastic. Every single line has got a quiet intensity. Even, it doesn't matter if he's just listening to someone say something he finds mildly irritating, or if someone's accusing him of murder. Everything irritates Herbert just enough to just get him to, he's always on the verge.
Right.
So he moves, as we know, back to Arkham, which is where this is set, and Miskatonic University, where he's studying. With Dan, etc., Dean Halsey, and that would be, for Lovecraft fans, that's quite a big reference because Miskatonic University, that's all tied into the Cthulhu stuff and whatnot, and Arkham is where a lot of the Lovecraftian stuff set. But I like that this film has a kind of basis in that, but then says that's all we need. We don't need to go too much into the Lovecraft stuff. Let's do our own thing. So the reason, as Ryan alluded to, that I said to him earlier this week, I consider it more of a sci-fi horror than a more sci-fi comedy in places, is because it's almost a parody of, as the original story was, the Frankenstein mythology, obviously with the resurrection. But this more directly is a parody of a parody because it's parodying the Lovecraft version of this. So it's doing the sci-fi twist, whereas Bram Stoker's Dracula was very much a horror. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus, was very much a gothic sci-fi story, one of the first sci-fi stories. So Herbert is pardon the pun, he's what's injected into this whole little cozy scene that's obviously going to shake up everybody's lives. As Ryan said, it's quite nice that we've got a nice dynamic here. You can believe Dan. He's not coming across as that young, like you said, Teller in these Friday movies. He would be a sleazeball just trying to get laid all the time.
Yeah.
He genuinely cares for Barbara Crampton. Barbara Crampton's character genuinely cares for him. But she says, my father's, what does she say? The last remaining Puritan, I think is the way she phrases it. So basically, yeah, you can date my daughter, but I'm going to treat you like you're still 14-year-olds. I'm not going to accept that my daughter has sex, even though she's in her probably her 20s at that stage. So it's nice that's put there to give it a kind of, that's why Dan would have to, be treading on eggshells quite a lot of the time. And then Dr. Hill and Herbert make one of the best double acts of antagonists that you can possibly have in a film, because Dr. Hill is so deplorable that you love Herbert by default for just meeting Dr. Hill. Dr. Hill starts as, first of all, we know he's a plagiarist because Herbert tells us straight away that he's stolen all of Hans Gruber's ideas.
Yeah,
not the Die Hard one. But Herbert being taken in to the lab, and he's talking about the 6 to 12 minutes of how long it takes. And when Herbert starts breaking those pencils, every time that Dr. Hill says something that Herbert knows is scientifically true in doctrine, but to him is total bullshit. And Herbert starts snapping those pencils. That is just, it's so well.
Yeah, like I said, that interaction with Herbert and the doctor is absolutely phenomenal.
Mr. West, might I suggest you start using a pen?
Yes.
Brilliant. You should have stolen more of Gruber's ideas, then at least you'd have some.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic stuff from Jeffrey Combs. No fucks given in terms of, I should probably be a bit smart about this and play nice with the doctor and whatnot to graduate at least and get right. All he's interested in is the work, just like Victor Frankenstein, the work. Yeah. So is Herbert a good guy? Is Herbert a bad guy? It wouldn't occur to Herbert. He has a bigger objective here, which is conquering death. So Dan's worried about getting his scholarship and whatnot. Herbert's worried about just needs a place to do his experiments. And a hospital degree lets him have corpses so he can reanimate them. That's all he cares about. He doesn't need a license for this. He's going to do it. And as we'll see, you'll find different ways to do it in the sequels. Barbara Crampton's character is absolutely fantastic. Meg, she could come off so easily as just the girl in one of these movies. Like, bless her, she embraced it, but Linnea Quigley did a lot of those kind of roles where she was just cast for her looks and then embraced it. But Barbara Crampton really does make the best out of it. You can believe that she is wholesome. She's modern. That's what I like about her and Dan as well. They do seem a bit more, it's almost like everybody else could have come out of the 1920s. Like the Dean's attitudes, Herbert's very reserved and stiff. But there's Dan with his Stop Making Sense Talking Heads poster behind him, and there's her saying, "Oh, my dad's Puritan, but don't worry, I'm cool." So there's nothing salacious about their relationship, which there's nothing sleazy, there's nothing weird, nothing. Because again, I think you need to leave room for how shocking that scene is later on, if you want to have that scene in there. But really, the crux of the movie is Herbert West, and there's a reason why the original story was called Herbert West Re-Animator. If Jeffrey Combs is not pitch perfect, this film doesn't work. Every single scene that Jeffrey Combs is in needs to work exactly perfectly. When you first meet him with Dan and whatnot, it is an awkward meeting, but Dan needs the money to keep his apartment, to keep his sculpture, so it's all trickled down. When you first meet him, you know obviously that something's happened in Switzerland, so you know something's already going on. You know he's got the rivalry with Dr. Hill that's going to play into it, and Dr. Hill's a creep. But what you don't expect to see quite so easily is, again, just like the opening scene, throwing you straight into Herbert's experiments. When Dan goes down the stairs later on, Herbert's already reanimated that cat and he's in the middle of fighting it. I mean, it's genius. There's no Dan, I'm having thoughts about, maybe we should try. There's none of that. It's already happened. It cuts the fat every single step of the way. It says, we don't need an introduction to this. We'll just have Herbert already. He's done it. He's done it already. Yeah. And we'll have boom, 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 boom. I love that scene. I know you said you don't like the effects terribly much, Tyler. I love that scene. I think one of the genius of parts of it is the light is swinging the whole time, so you can never really see what's going on in the corners.
Yeah.
And it's a great old substitute for a spooky lab. It's spooky enough without being, having fog machines and the like, but it's just dark and dingy enough that you can believe that somebody like Herbert would get his stuff done down there. Again, what I love about Herbert is, to him, the work is so important that the idea that Dr. Hill wants to steal the experiment from him is just as offensive as Dr. Hill being. But we won't spoil the end of the movie. But Dr. Hill wants to do away with Dan, so that he can take on Herbert as his apprentice. He's going to blackmail Herbert and steal the Re-Animator.
Right.
And he says, of course, we'll need to get rid of Dan. We'll need to get rid of Dan Kane. Herbert's not particularly fussed about that, but it's the idea, because when he kills Dr. Hill, we know obviously that's not going to stick, and that's on the cover of all the things, wouldn't it? When he kills him, what is the word that Herbert uses? He just says plagiarist.
Plagiarist, yeah.
Plagiarist.
Yeah.
That frustrates him more than the idea that guy was going to bump off Dan just to get Dan out of the picture and score with Barbampton. That infuriates Herbert more. And that to me sums Herbert up perfectly. The work comes before Dan, comes before Dr. Hill, not to go into spoilers, but it comes before himself at the end. He's just so interested in the work being taken forward. But again, Jeffrey Combs knows how to pitch it perfectly. Apparently, it didn't start out being terribly comedic, and they just started going over lines in the way that a theatre production does. And they decided gradually, we need to play this for laughs. We need to. Jeffrey's too funny being completely straight. And Bruce Abbott's such a good straight man to Herbert as Dan, that it's too funny not to do it as a totally straight film. We need to throw in these kind of over the top moments and these kind of bizarre little quirks for Herbert. I mean, Ryan mentioned the rescue sequence that we have later on, which, yeah, it's an absolutely horrible scene where Megan's been taken advantage of. But the way Herbert comes in that scene is just, wow. That is one of the most bizarre. You shouldn't be cheating for Herbert at this stage. He has committed murder. He has done all sorts, but he comes in and it's like a superhero entrance. He's already there. You don't see him coming in. He's already there and just standing there. I must say, Dr. Hill, I'm very disappointed in you. You steal a secret of life, and here you are trusting with a bubble-headed co-ed. You're not even a second-rate scientist. And all these little moments where he has like, who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow. I mean, it's just absolutely fantastic. Every little the cat scene, when Dan says to him, why didn't you tell us, why didn't you leave a note, and what would the note say, Dan? Cat dead, details later. Like, just every single line that Jeffrey Combs delivers is perfect. And it wouldn't be if you cast just another horror type actor from a B movie. Jeffrey Combs wasn't a name at the time. He was just a theatre actor, done a few, bless you again, right? He'd done a few things, but this would set up Jeffrey Combs for a whole career throughout these films and from beyond, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where he would play pleasant characters or unpleasant characters, but always who have a fantastic way with dialogue and don't need to raise their voice to really be in charge of a room. Because Herbert's a very small, demure man, but when he walks into a room, he's got presence. It's a phenomenal film. The choices made, like to have the Re-Animator fluid be that fluorescent green, that's very distinctive. The score by Richard Band, it copies the Psycho score completely at the start. The theme
it does,
the Psycho theme, but that was intentional too, because they wanted Herbert to have they wanted to remind you of Herbert being a little bit like Anthony Perkins. He's a bit
right,
he's almost childlike in his pursuit of what he wants to go for, which is two very different goals: the pursuit of life rather than the pursuit of death. But it's also a kind of, I don't know if Ryan, you've now got it, but I don't know if you've seen it. The Revenge of Frankenstein, the second Frankenstein film, with Peter Cushing. It's very much in that vein where it challenges you, because the first Frankenstein movie for Hammer with Peter Cushing, Frankenstein is a murderer. and he very much is a villain. The second one challenges you to say, is what he's doing that bad? Should we be cheering this guy a little bit more? I mean, yeah, he did bump off Dr. Hill, but in Herbert's mind, he can bring him back 2 seconds later, so it's not even time. I mean, that's how kind of deranged Herbert is by that point, but it makes perfect scientific sense because Herbert's an eternal optimist. For as downbeat as he is, he always thinks the next one's going to work.
Right.
It's great. Like he's convinced the next. It's like Ed Wood, you know. What's that? Worst movie ever? Well, my next one will be better. You know, like it just exactly the kind of character that is interesting to follow because it could get repetitive if he was just reanimating over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And briefly to sum up, this is the Arrow Video limited edition that came out a few years ago. And this has got a cut that I'd never seen before on disc 2, the integral version. And what it does is it takes the R-rated cut, the director's cut, and the unrated cut, and just throws in everything into one big movie. So it's the longest cut of the film available. It is 105 minutes, so it's 19 minutes longer than the unrated one, or the R-rated one. Sorry. There's a few things in it that I'm not too keen on. There's a section where Herbert's starting to lose it a little bit. He's not focused, and then he has to shoot up some of his own fluid, a small dose, to get back to being Herbert. I don't like that very much. And on the Blu-ray, Jeffrey Combs says that too. He said he was glad that wasn't in the final version because he thinks Herbert should just be Herbert. He doesn't need to shoot up to be Herbert. It should just be natural that way. And then the other major difference, and it is a major difference, is that in the unrated version, Dr. Hill has mind control, which again is pure Lovecraft. So if you've only seen the Gore version, you wouldn't know that. But Dr. Hill has mind control, and the camera completely changes and focuses in on his eyes as he tells somebody what to do. So he tells the dean about Dan, you know, and in the theatrical or whatever version, you kind of go, why is he listening so much to Dr. Hill and just all of a sudden hates Dan? He's been mind controlled, and that doesn't play into this film at all, really, if you in other scenes. But it's also how he gets Herbert to agree to work with him just before Herbert takes his head off. It's also how he convinces people around him to let him. You know, he's got that creepy file on Meg. That's how he gets all that kind of stuff. He uses mind control, and that's why Meg doesn't just flee when he says, you know, what his creepy chat up lines. I can't even remember them, but when he's saying, "I want you to think of me as your friend, and you can come to me," he's mind controlling her there. And if you don't see this version, you wouldn't know from the camera angle that was cut that it's supposed to be this kind of Bela Lugosi mind control, where it's like, you know, the camera would always zoom in on Bela Lugosi's eyes, and, you know, he'd have the, you know, you will listen to me, you know, it's very much that. It's kind of schlocky B-movie stuff, but actually that's very Lovecraftian as well. Yeah. And that will come in, interestingly, in Bride of Re-Animator. We won't go into that just now, but that will come into play in the sequel. So something that was dropped from the cut that 99% of people have seen does come in for the sequel. It's kind of bizarre. Yeah. But that's great too, because, hey, the end of this doesn't really tie into the start of the next one anyway. And it does and it doesn't. It's great. It's one of those bizarre, who cares? This edition from Arrow Video is absolutely brilliant. Should anybody see it in the wild? And it comes with the complete comic book of Re-Animator, 3-issue comic from back in the day, which is really cool. And has quite a few of the deleted scenes you don't get to see. It's gory as all hell. So yeah, fantastically fun. I was reading this in the bathroom the other day, Tyler.
Oh, were you? Yeah.
In the facilities, in the water closet.
For you,
so, yeah. So yeah, Re-Animator for me is just, it's a masterpiece. It's a terrific horror film. It's a terrific dark comedy, and it's a terrific sci-fi film. I think it's all three of those things.
Yeah.
And it's a tour de force for one of my favorite character actors, Jeffrey Combs, who I've loved since I was 8 years old and started watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So, yeah, to me, this is just one of the most insanely fun, easy to watch films of the 1980s. And I love horror comedy. I'm kind of the opposite from you two. Like, I love horror comedy. That's very much what I operate. So, yeah, to me, this is just electric. So, with that, we will bring our roundtable to a conclusion for episode 1 of Re-Animator. So, your homework for next month, folks, is to watch Re-Animator because we've been very good and not spoiling too much, and maybe get a head start on Bride of Re-Animator, which we'll cover at some point in the next month or so. Anybody get anything to plug? I think you two boys have a YouTube channel. It sticks in my mind that you do. I can't remember. Let's see. Yeah, Ryan.
Let's
Plug
see.
something.
My main thing I just want to plug is upcoming episode of Zero the Hero I did with you, Davey. We talked about the movie One Missed Call. We recorded it about 3 days ago now, and I'm just working on editing it. It should be up in the next couple of days, probably. I'm just about done with the editing, so it'll be up soon. Wanted to get it out before Halloween since it's a horror movie. But yeah, come check that out. It was a great time.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I can say this because I'm not part of the actual post-production, only pre-production. I've seen a little bit already and it looks, I was sitting like that. It was fantastic. Of course, I was watching myself at that point, so whatevs. Taylor, promote something.
So I do have my channel. It's called LP Tremors, and yeah, it's if you want to see myself just do some cringy shit, hop on LP Tremors. One thing I can plug is and I've mentioned this while I was doing my Re-Animator review. Friday the 13th, myself and these two beautiful men you see right now on your screen. We are reviewing every single Friday the 13th movie from the first movie all the way to the 2009 remake. We just finished the 5th movie, A New Beginning. That was out sometime last week. And next week, we're going to be reviewing a full review of the Jason Lives, of course, the 6th installment of the franchise. So yeah, stay tuned for that if you are Friday the 13th fan or horror fan or whatever. Other than that, just check out my shit. That's pretty much all I got.
Yeah. Good.
Music and horror shit. Yeah.
Good stuff, Tyler. So no, I'm going to fully endorse both of you. You both have wonderful channels. As good as you are as YouTubers, you are even better people. And I value you both dearly.
Kiss ass.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you come back on next month? Yeah, definitely.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Because if they don't, fuck them. Right. Thanks very much for watching, folks. Ryan has got an outro, Taylor's got an outro, I've got an outro. Can we all do them at the same time? Taylor, you do your stay goal point.
Yeah. Are we doing this at the same time, or are we just?
I'm going to count us down, and we're all going to do our intros at the same time. And Ryan, you've got
Okay. Well,
you came up with something.
Yep.
Right.
For Ryan Gavalier. At
the same time, we're doing it on top of each other. I want this to be as awkward as possible. You ready?
Oh, okay. All right. I get it.
1, 2, 3.
All right, guys. Stay metal. Stay scared. Bye, guys.
Love and mercy. Yeah, see, that's good. I like that. That's good. I like that awful scuzzy nature to the end of a wonderful episode. Oh, fantastic.
Brilliant.
Gentlemen, a pleasure as always.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being had.
Love and mercy.
You and your friends tonight.
It really scares me.
It's Ryan's favorite when he's on this channel. He has to get scares me. Thanks for watching, folks. If you made it this far, check in with a psychiatrist.